Hi, I'm Professor Sharon Ruston at the English Literature and Creative Writing Department in Lancaster University. And today I'm going to suggest what you might look for when you're reading Dante. I'll use examples from Inferno, which is the Italian word for hell. This is the first of 3 volumes that makes up Dante Alighieri's trilogy, which in English we call the Divine Comedy. Dante's Divine Comedy describes the journey of the pilgrim Dante, who may or may not be the real Dante, from the dark wood in which he wakes to find himself at the beginning of Inferno, to his descent into the 9 circles of hell, then upwards through purgatory and eventually into paradise. The journey is imagined in fantastic detail. For example, Dante is careful to give, say, the topography of hell, which means that many artists have been able to reimagine it in paintings and graphic novels. The journey is not one simply of covering distance and ground, though. It's also a spiritual pilgrimage. The character Dante must experience and learn about the sins he encounters in hell in order to pass through it and make it into purgatory and paradise. The Divine Comedy consists of 100 cantos divided into 3 sections, so Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. Inferno has 34 cantos and the other 2 have 33. The opening canto, which I'll look at in a moment, is the extra one, and it operates as a kind of introduction to the whole Divine Comedy. The first known use of a rhyme scheme called terza rima is found here. So that's T-E-R-Z-A-R-I-M-A, terza rima. This rhyme scheme operates in stanzas or verses of 3 lines, which are also known as tercets. Most translators don't use this rhyme scheme because it is very difficult to use. But one person who did use terza rima for her translation was the English crime writer and poet Dorothy L. Sayers, who was born in 1893 and died in 1957. She considered her translation of Dante's Divine Comedy to be her best work. I'm going to read the first bit out of Sayers' translation aloud, and I'd like you to listen out to the rhyming sounds at the end of the lines. Terza rima rhymes the first and the third lines of the stanza with the second line of the next stanza. Then the first and the third line of the second stanza are rhymed with the second line of the third stanza. So if I was to give you letters to indicate the rhymes, it would be A, B, A, B, C, B, C, D, C. I think about it as a kind of rolling rhyme scheme, which sort of does this as the stanzas move through. So see if you can hear the sounds in Sayers' translation. Here we go. Midway this way of life we're bound upon, I woke to find myself in a dark wood, where the right road was wholly lost and gone. Ay me, how hard to speak of it, that rude and rough and stubborn forest. The mere breath of memory stirs the old fear in the blood. It is so bitter it goes nigh to death. Yet there I gained such good that, to convey the tale, I'll write what else I found therewith. So I think you can already see that this was published some time ago. Sayers' translation of Inferno came out in 1949. We don't use words like nigh and therewith so often these days. You also hopefully could hear the rhyme scheme, though many of the rhymes are not full rhymes. So Sayers rhymes wood at the end of the second line of the first stanza with rude and blood at the end of the first and third lines in the second stanza. Then breath in the second stanza is picked up again in the rhymes of death and herewith in the third stanza. There is some full rhyme here, where the vowel sound and end consonants are the same, but the initial consonants are different, say as in breath and death. Once you've identified this rhyme scheme, it's always good to ask, why use this pattern of rhymes? Why choose this rhyme scheme over another? What does it matter that this is written in terza rima? If you think about it strictly, terza rima can't really begin because it has always already begun. Here in the first stanza, for example, we might wonder where the rhyme is that the first and third lines are completing. So you might imagine that the words upon and gone were picking up a rhyming sound from a stanza before the one that we see on the page. The rhyme scheme seems to be always already begun, as it continues rolling on with the second line rhyme picked up in the first and third lines of the next stanza. And similarly, it can never really end in the same way. Sayers' translation begins the whole of the Divine Comedy with this word, midway. And Inferno begins in the middle of the pilgrim Dante's life, in the middle of a wood, in the middle of a night, and in the middle of his spiritual crisis. The text begins in the middle of things. Another way to describe that is to say that it begins in media res. I hope you can see that Dante chose the perfect rhyme scheme in Terza Rima to portray this idea of beginning in the middle. Thank you.